Hello and welcome to 18 WJTS-Inform. This is a municipal election. As a matter of fact, you can be voting right now up to November 3rd. Joining me in the studio is a candidate for the City of Jasper mayor. Please welcome Wayne Schuetter. Wayne, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I think, Wayne, the first thing we'd like to know is who is Wayne Schuetter?
Well, I was born and raised here in Jasper. Grew up on the north end of Vine Street. A lot of people knew my father as Schnapsy Schuetter. His real name was Alfred. Mom was Ida Mae. I graduated from Jasper High School in 1968, went into social science education at Indiana State, graduated from there in 1972, started my teaching career at Linton Stockton, where I was there for 2 years, teaching high school level social studies, and then from in 1974, my wife Myra and I moved up to Putnam County, where I took a job at South Putnam High School, where I taught for 32 years. I also started out as an assistant football coach and assistant track and field coach, but at South Putnam I became the head coach of football and boys track and field. I was also a wrestling coach there. Also while there, Myra and I both, while we lived in Putnam County, we finished up our master's degree at DePaul University. Through the course of my teaching career, I got very much involved in classroom improvement, school improvement. I was president of the local Teachers Association, lead negotiator for many years. I got involved with DePaul University's education department, was on their oversight committee for 5 years. I was a guest lecturer there. There's a whole range of things that I was involved in from leadership skills. Myra and I moved back to Jasper in 1994, back here to help Dad in his later years. And when we moved back here, we got involved as much as we could in the community. Of course, I was still teaching in Putnam County, so I was driving back and forth. But Myra got involved. She was appointed to the Arts Commission, where she was for 12 years. And I worked, I was on and worked with the Arts Commission in terms of grants when they were a regional center. Sat on the grant review committee, for 5 years. But then also during that time, I was appointed to, by Governor Kernan at the time, appointed to the Indiana Governor's Arts Award Selection Committee. So I've got a wide range of background. During high school and college, I actually started working, Bill, for the City of Jasper by working at the Park Department. During high school summers, college summers, and while I was coming home on weekends from college, they had work for me to do on Saturdays. So, my involvement in Jasper has been long-term.
Now you're decided to run for mayor.
Yes.
What made you do that?
Well, the last 9 years, as some people know, I've been on the Jasper Utility Service Board. When I fully retired from public education in 2006, I was retired for a couple of months, and Mayor Bill Schmidt called and said, Wayne, I have an opening on the Utility Service Board. Would you consider taking it? And I did. I became chairman, was chairman for 5 years. And through that experience, Bill, I gained a lot of insight into the tax policies of the city, the spending of the city, the essentialness of everything that we do in Jasper. I like to tell new members of the Utility Board that the Utility Board oversees things that touch every citizen of this city every second of every day. And, the history of utilities has been pretty solid over the many years. And I was telling our electric department, when people in other cities call when the power goes off, but in Jasper, when it flickers, they call because, it's been done so well. So over the last several years, I decided to bring all my background and expertise of leadership and decision-making. I did mention that while near Greencastle, IBM had a facility there, and I taught thinking and problem-solving there to their employees. So I bring a lot to the table, and I think that as we move forward, we've got a lot going on in the city. We need to be thinking long-term, not just short-term.
Okay, well, let's talk about what you consider the important issues, concerns, and how would you address those for the city of Jasper in the coming years?
Well, I think there are many, and I've been out talking with people in what I call neighborhood chats. People have hosted me in their front yard or driveway and invited neighbors in. I've attended block parties. I've done one-on-one. And I think the main thing that a lot of people are wondering about is all the spending, particularly spending on outside consultants who, as I've said, I think are giving us somewhat generic ideas in some respects. They're not giving things, to me anyway, that are typically Jasper. We're a unique city. And so I don't think we should be like every other city or like cities that are getting the same ideas on streetscape. So I think one of the big issues is spending. And I understand, and I was part of that process of coming up with the downtown plan, the city, all of this. But as we go forward with all of these plans, we need to make sure we're doing it in a cost-effective manner with practical spending so that we're not going to force the burden of taxes and future payments for all of this onto new generations. And what I hear from the public is, what are we getting for this and all this spending? But beyond that, I think we're not looking long-term on some of these things, Bill. And so I decided to get into the race because I think two big concerns. One was the tax abatement program, which worked very well, is working well, but I think it needs to be modified. I think we have seen, as we used it for the last few years, that it is good, but are we going to see the returns of that? And there's a lot in that. I don't know if we have much time we have. So, but let's just say, in talking with city council members, business leaders, and others, they feel it needs to be modified. It's working, but maybe the way it's been working isn't as beneficial to the city as we thought it would be. Then layer on top of that the action taken on the TIF district. And TIFs are very controversial around the country, and I've done some research on them. Cities that don't use them properly have gotten themselves in major debt over it. And what people need to understand, and as I tell people this, they didn't realize it, that when you have a tax abatement program and then the redevelopment commission asks that we have a TIF that encompasses a third of our city, the abatement property, which has had 50, 60, maybe up now $70, $75 million investment in it, those property taxes have been abated. In other words, we haven't seen the benefits in property taxes for all that investment. We won't see it for another 7 to 10 years. When you layer on top of that the TIF district, when those property taxes are going to be paid, if nothing changes, all of those property taxes will go into the redevelopment commission's funds, not the general operating fund. And so the benefit of all that investment, I guess you could say the hassle of all the increased traffic and all of this, the citizens won't see that benefit of property tax toward the general fund as we thought we might. And I just don't think people have thought this through as much as they should have before we implement it. TIF can be a great developmental tool when used properly, Bill. And so I guess you could say my background in analysis and thinking and teaching and so forth says I think we need to take a good look at this and make sure we're not setting ourselves up for future problems economically in Jasper and just operating the city.
I know you mentioned you're not sure how much time you have. You take whatever time you need to say. Well, I guess the next thing, what is the difference between you and your opponent?
Well, I think my opponent, and people have said, and I know he has said that, implicated that, vote for him is vote for vision in the future. Well, that the implication is voting for the past. But what, people who know me, people who have seen me on the Utility Service Board, I am constantly thinking about the future. Some of the things that the mayor, present mayor, is talking about having gotten done during his administration, I taught history, Bill. History is an ongoing process. So just because you're in office at a given time doesn't mean that you're responsible for getting that done. A good example, one that people that involved in the process know, we talk a lot now about the gig city, Smithville coming in and fiber optics throughout the city. The discussion about doing fiber optics in the city actually started while I was chairman of the Utility Service Board. Our general manager, Bud Hausberger, he and I were talking as we did on a regular basis. He said, Wayne, I'm thinking about looking at fiber optic to connect all of the utility facilities. At that time, on my background of teaching, Bill, I didn't mention, I was a technology advocate in our school corporation. I sat on our technology planning committee. I was the first in our school to use technology in the classroom. I actually lectured at DePaul University on how to use technology in the classroom. So my background said, okay, the first thing I asked Bud is, why are we looking just at our facilities? Our city needs fiber optics. Right? People had talked to me about it. And so what we did, we meaning the electric committee, who oversaw that at the time, and Mr. Hausberger took the lead, looked into having different companies who could provide fiber optics connect our facilities. And we actually had one come in and give us a full-blown proposal to do it. And that company that came in was Smithville. And so Smithville already knew Jasper. They already had a presence here, so to speak. At that time, it was going to be too expensive. And at that time, Smithville told us they did not have the licenses to go residential. So the discussion was already in place. So when Mayor Seitz came in, he came in with the idea of fiber optics, which we had heard from a lot of people. He had talked with one company, not Smithville, And through, with my encouragement, Mr. Hausberger encouraged the mayor, let's go out and get RFPs and see who else might be wanting to do it. And I think that quote, historical process led to us having Smithville come in. We always thought Smithville was a great company when we looked at them. They couldn't meet the needs that we were looking at. Now they can. We always thought they were going to be a great company, and that's come to fruition. So I think the difference is, as mayor, as a teacher, as a coach, my basic philosophy was and always is, it's about we. In other words, very seldom is a one individual going to get things accomplished. You have to have everybody working together. I believe very strongly in communication. I believe very strongly in cooperation. Even when I was negotiating contracts for our teachers with the school board, the superintendent and I always had a cooperation in terms of what the overall goal was. We communicated quite well. And so when we talked budget, when we talked at the table, even though we didn't always agree, we always understood what we were trying to do was the best for the school corporation. And I would bring those kind of backgrounds to being mayor, to communicate with all the decision makers. Make sure they're on board, make sure they've had their input, make sure the public has given us feedback. Make sure that there is a spirit of cooperation as to where we're going as a city. And finally, a consensus among decision makers. And I'm not sure that's been the case as much as it should be when you're running a city. On the other side, and I know the catchphrase now is quality of place and what we're trying to do downtown and the cultural center and all that. I'm in favor of all that. Myra and I, when Myra was on the commission, we talked, and when I was involved with the arts, we talked about the arts needed a presence in the downtown area. It was during Myra's on the board, we talked about all the classes they were having. They needed space and tried to bring them here. And at that time, the city had space at the basement of the swimming pool. Mm-hmm. And so the park department and the arts department got together, and that's where they had those. But there was a communication there and a cooperation to bring the arts downtown. So when people talk about a cultural center, it's not something new to Myra and me. We've talked about bringing the culture downtown for the last 15 years or so. And I think that's very important. But you have to do it in a way that does not strain the city financially, and in a way that you can maintain and operate what you do. You ask a major difference between the current mayor and myself. I think that's a big one. The analysis of what are the operating costs of what we're trying to do, what's going to be the maintenance costs of what we try to do, and I'm not sure that discussion has been held as much as we need to have. So I think there's, but in terms of the future, yes. But I also think we don't want to forget what I call all generations. There's a lot of emphasis now, and you hear a lot about we need to do this to bring people back to Jasper. The millennials need to be here for our kids and our grandkids. Everybody understands that's true. But you don't want to forget those people who built the city, who got us to where we are now, all generations. And something that came very clear to me, and I'm talking with people, is that the city needs to make sure we are taking care of all of our citizens, and we are aware of all of those citizens. Going back to the connectivity thing with the internet. Again, as a teacher, starting to use technology in the classroom, it became very obvious to me that there are people who are not connected and cannot be connected, and that's because they don't have the finances to do it. And as a city, I think not only in terms of internet, but in terms of information. We need to make sure we're not forgetting about those people, and there's a good number of them out there who don't have access to things like the Herald, who don't have access to other information, and we need to do our best to get it out there. That really was driven home to me when a few years ago, in a cost-saving manner, it was decided not to print the city calendars. And there was an uproar because not everybody could get on the internet to see what was happening in the city. And, that tells you there are a good number of people out there that you can't forget when you do things. And I think that's one thing I will bring to the table, if you will.
All right, well, now I'm going to let you take this opportunity to look right in the voters. And you've shown a lot of depth of character, but now let's find out your plea to the voters.
Well, I think to the voters, definitely get out and vote. One of the things I've been talking about, this is your city, and who will be the next leaders of Jasper is your decision, but only if you go out and vote. We can talk about it. You can say, yes, I'm in favor of this, I'm in favor of that. But to take the time to vote, it makes it your decision. So, I would encourage people to get out and vote. You can vote early now. Bill already mentioned that. That's easy to do at the courthouse. Simple process, but definitely on November 3rd, get out and vote. And if you agree with me, if you have the same concerns about the city of Jasper and going forward that I have, I would appreciate that you vote for me.
Wayne, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
Certainly been a pleasure talking with you, and we hope that you are learning more every time you watch 18 WJTS Inform. Our guest has been Wayne Schuetter. He is running for the City of Jasper mayor. Wayne, thanks once again.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you for watching WJTS Inform. We're local people watching local people.